Okay, just while we have people file in, I will ask Liz a couple of questions that have no bearing on the topic at hand. So
Oh,
we've talked food, we've talked color, we've talked cities, and you just told me you're going to about 25 different cities, so we won't do that one. So favorite food, what's your favorite food?
sushi.
Sushi, just boop right in.
Second is cheeseburgers, though.
Sushi and cheeseburgers. All right, that's
Mhm.
kind of both ends of the spectrum there. Well, outside of vegetarian, but uh,
Yes.
I like a good burger. I like sushi, but I don't go too nuts on sushi. Um,
It's definitely my favorite food. And then, but cheeseburgers, if it, an excellent cheeseburger outweighs really good sushi, but it has to be that perfect cheeseburger with the right amount of juice and the right type of cheese,
gotcha.
and perfect bread.
Now, all right, then how do you like that cheeseburger? What temp? Like
Medium
medium?
rare.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't eat a hamburger medium rare. I can't do that. Can't do
I
it.
like it very juicy.
Oh, I can't do that. And then, so what about then favorite color? What's your favorite color?
Orange.
Orange. There we go.
Mhm.
All right.
The
So,
color of energy.
so orange is a lot of sushi. A lot of sushi has some orange in it, right?
That's true if you're eating
So,
salmon.
yeah. There we go. All right. I guess we need to work. So
I
let me
guess
start. Yeah. Why not? Right.
we're here for a reason.
Right. Let me get us started. So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Insightful Accountants Future Forward Summit. My name is Gary Dehart. I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant and the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast and the Future Forward Summit. The session is named Make Technology Your Secret Sauce, and our speaker, Liz Mason of High Rock Accounting, has a lot to share around that. She certainly has been tech forward in her firm, so she's got a lot of firsthand experience she'll be sharing. I'm going to let her introduce herself after I've gone over the housekeeping items, primarily around CPE. You know, you have to be here for 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and you have to answer at least 3 of the polling questions. We only have 3, so you better get them all if you want your CPE. If you meet these 2 requirements, we will send you an email with a link to a survey. Complete the survey, and we'll send you the certificate. That should take place within the next 24 to 36 hours. The recording of this will be posted to our YouTube page. Probably is going to take about 3 days to get that posted. I will drop the link to the YouTube page into the chat once I go dark, and then we will also send it to you as part of the follow-up for the entire Future Forward Summit series, the kind of the 2-day series here. And so if you have any questions during the session, we ask you that you put them in the Q&A panel, and then be sure to make a specific reference to the topic that you're asking the question about. Liz is going to monitor the Q&A, but she may not get to it immediately. So you just want to make sure you don't say, what did you mean by that? Give her a little context about what you're talking about so she can answer the question if it's a few minutes past when you write it. So this session is brought to you by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on what you all like is autopilot. So work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Liz, I know you're a big Xero shop, so I'm sure you've got some good insight there. So without any more delay, Liz, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing what you have to share with us, and I will be going here. Thanks.
Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Gary. As always, it's great to see your face. And to everyone else, welcome. As Gary mentioned, we are sponsored by Xero, but we are not talking about Xero today. So I apologize if you're getting all excited about that, but I will rope it into some of the other topics. I'm Liz Mason, the CEO and founder of High Rock Accounting. We've been in the cloud since 2013 when I founded the firm. We have about 30 people all over the country. We serve clients US-based majority, as well as a few overseas clients as well. Everything we do is cloud-based, CFO down to bookkeeping. We also have a tax team that we use to do some tax compliance work and advisory work for our clients when it makes sense. I am a national Xero ambassador, which basically means I get to work with Xero very closely to help influence their product, work with their sales team so they understand what accountants are going through and cater their conversations and what they're able to provide, especially from an educational perspective, back to the community. As Gary mentioned, I will absolutely be monitoring Q&A. I encourage you to ask questions. I love when it's interactive. I think it's better if you can learn through questioning and through understanding and through sharing. If you have other things that you want to share, I'll bring those up as well. So what are we talking about today? Secret sauce can mean a lot of things, right? You know, when I hear that term, I think of McDonald's secret sauce that they have on their Big Mac, right? And they don't tell anyone what the recipe is. However, I think that doesn't make sense, right? It's so good, they should share it. So what we're doing is we're sharing that secret sauce and talking about the way that we think about technology and the way that we think about implementing it at the firm, implementing it for clients, as well as, you know, constant innovation and what that looks like. So why automate in the first place? I think that one might be a little bit self-explanatory, but we'll go over kind of the basics of that. Platform and process, which means what technology are we using? What do we mean when we say platform? And what is a process and how do we utilize that in our analysis? Tech stack being the different technologies that we use and how they stack together, either horizontally or vertically, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. What is a conversion metric in a sales process, and what's success look like to you, and how do you plan for success? In order to do those things, we have some learning objectives as well. So we're going to start with identifying the type of firm you're in. And you know what we like to do is start with kind of grouping where you are in the journey of technology. So are you fully adopted, cloud-based, totally integrated, everything's great? This might not be the best webinar for you. If you're starting that journey, or if you're thinking about innovating that journey, or if you have a cloud-based tech stack that you've had for, 5 years and you're thinking about what's next, this is a great place to think about it. We'll start talking about the process of cloud platform, what that looks like. How do you select apps? Where do you even go to find them? Determining how to incorporate them into your current technology for yourself and for your clients. And then discovering the benefits of different pricing models, because how you price and how you use technology go hand in hand. So why should we automate? As we've gotten better with technology, we've gotten faster and more efficient. We've been able to utilize these tools to work together with clients. Accountants' roles are changing. We're hearing about the tech adoption curve. We're hearing about the rate of change. We're hearing about all the new developments. We're hearing about ChatGPT and the scary thing that they might just take our jobs. So what's driving the change in technology? A lot of it's about efficiency and about being able to provide higher value. So first, we had this evolution into the cloud where, previously you had to be on a server base or a computer and you had to go to a physical location to be able to do your work. And that's wildly inefficient because maybe you can't get there, or maybe there's a global pandemic and it doesn't make sense to have things on a server anymore that's not accessible from the cloud. So then we had the next iteration of people putting things on cloud, based servers where it was hosted in the cloud where you could access it from anywhere. And a lot of people are still doing that, and that works for certain instances. But I always recommend going to a native cloud application, because a native cloud application is going to give you all of the efficiencies without having to update it yourself. The role of the accountant has become much more real time. People are expecting responses to text messages. They're expecting responses to emails almost immediately. And while I have a lot of opinions about communication cadence, I also think that it's very important to understand that the rate of change in the ecosystem in business is increasing at a rate that business owners, that our clients need information faster and they need to be able to access it wherever they are. And traditionally, they have asked us. So what does that look like in the future when they're able to just access it themselves? And how do we encourage them and train them and make sure they're interpreting that data better and providing that higher level of value? So a traditional schedule, this is back in the day, we would have the data entry and the review work, the administrative tasks, client meetings, new business meetings, technical upskilling. That's, reading papers, thinking about things, attending webinars, all of that still kind of exists. But in a traditional standpoint, we had lots of client calls and emails, payments, timesheets. There's a bunch of things on here that can be automated and a bunch that cannot. And there was so much to do and so many hours spent every single day that we started looking for ways to eliminate the hours spent doing this. And when we started looking for those time-saving applications, for those technologies that could come in and truly help us upskill and make things better, we started automating and cutting out big chunks of that time. When you're thinking about data entry, that's going away very quickly, right? Back in the day, you used to have to type out the whole description from whatever bank statement you were looking at, the whole dollar amount, everything around it had to be entered specifically into the system. And now you have most general ledger systems pulling that directly from a bank feed and entering it for you for approval, or using bank rules. It might propose an entry, or it might automatically fill out the details for you as you're going because it's reading it for you. And that technology has gotten so much better that at this point, there's much less data entry, and it's mostly just transactional review work. In the past, polls and surveys were saying that 30% of advisors' time was spent on actual data entry. And now it's cut down significantly when they're using cloud-based automated tools. Review work used to be much more difficult because you had to go into each detail, and you also knew that that was hand-coded by a human, and so there was much more room for error. There's a lot of administrative work that can be automated, and there's more coming. And I brought up ChatGPT earlier because everybody's talking about it, right? And everybody's using it, and I'm using it frequently. And I find it's really great at writing first drafts of things. I've been feeding it my writing style so that I can say, hey, respond to this client email professionally in the tone of voice of Liz Mason, explaining these particular issues, and then I bullet point them out. And ChatGPT will write a beautiful, longly worded email, and I can go ahead and copy and paste that, do a little bit of editing, and it takes me maybe 5 minutes to craft something that used to take me 30 minutes. And that's a huge administrative savings of time. We also have scheduling apps, right? We don't have to call a client, leave a message, wait for them to call back, go back and forth, or even, in an email say, I am available this day and time. And granted, those apps have been around for a while, but still not everyone's using them. And it creates a whole lot of time savings when you have a Calendly link and you just send it out and somebody schedules time with you within your boundaries, and you make sure you set up when your working hours are and how much time you need in between meetings and everything else. And that happens automatically for you so that you no longer have to do that for yourself. It makes a big difference when you have an automated schedule. And you can see just by cutting out very simple things in automation on a day-to-day workday, we're able to get from a 9-hour day down to a 5-hour day. And that's particularly good time savings. And that's not even optimized for all of the technology available today. That's optimized for the technology that most people are using on a regular basis inside of our industry. So what does that mean? Ultimately, it means that anything that can be automated will be automated. Anything that can be automated will be. And I say that twice because if you think about it, humans inherently are lazy. And I don't say that to be mean. I say that because that's human nature. Human nature is to do the bare minimum that we can and get by with as good results as our anxiety lets us get by with in truth, right? And so when you're thinking about it, we don't want to do stuff that a computer can do. And why should we do it? It's much easier to set it up at the beginning and have it do it for us. And that being said, we have to learn the programs, and we have to learn to trust the programs to get to the point where we trust them to do it for us. But ultimately, automation frees up the manual basic time that we would otherwise spend doing these tasks, and it allows us to provide more value back to our client base. When we think about the value that we can provide, very frequently in the Xero ecosystem, at least, we talk a lot about cloud collaboration. And to us, that means collaborating on providing valuable insights and information back to our client base, being able to think through things from a higher level, strategize them, put vision behind it, interpret the numbers. It doesn't mean we just get to the numbers and we hand them off to the client. Now, cloud collaboration is where what I said earlier, where we're able to get clients into the tools and looking at their numbers themselves and giving them the ability to collaborate with us on what that should look like and how they're going to use that data and that information that we're able to produce through these systems and what they're going to do next with it. Clients want our expertise. And so the more time we can free up to provide them with our higher level thought, the better. We have seen thousands of businesses, some of you probably hundreds of thousands of businesses, looking at everything from tax to bookkeeping to accounting to projections. We understand these things in a way that one business owner that maybe has, maybe this is their second business, they still don't understand it the same way that we do. They still don't have the experience level or the ability to interpret or the ability to see across the same industry in multiple different ways that we do. And that's what they're paying us for. They're not paying for us to go data enter their bank statement line items. They want our advice. We're the first people they call when they have big questions. So where are you on this journey? So let me define these for you, and then we're going to get into a polling question. And I heard Gary say that there's only 3 polling questions and you need all 3 to get CPEs. So I'm going to do you a favor and say polling question a bunch of times before the polling question comes up. So if you're kind of half paying attention, you can click back and pay attention now. So let me describe the different answers before we get into the actual polling question. So for this one, we're using a tax firm example. A traditional firm or a traditional tax firm is billing on the completion of work. We're doing hourly billing. We're finishing the tax return. We're shipping it out. We're getting the signature. We're sending a bill. A lot of paper and email. Clients are still mailing their tax documents in or emailing them, sometimes in PDF. We're booking meetings the old-fashioned way. People are coming to the office, sitting down. Sometimes they bring a shoebox full of receipts. We all know how those clients are. Generally, there's 1 meeting per year in person. It could be via Zoom since the pandemic has upgraded that quite a bit. But there's a lot of manual data entry. The information is not put together all year long. We're not looking at quarterlies. We're looking at after year end, compiling all of the bookkeeping, preparing a tax return. A planning tax firm, on the other hand, is starting to think about how do we use information during the year instead of just waiting until year end. So they're still billing upon completion. They're mostly PDF and email, starting to use some of those portals to get information. There's lots of calls booked, maybe 6 months, quarterly calls. They're doing import export. Maybe they get CSV downloads of bank information that they're importing into the general ledger on a quarterly basis. There's a lot of conversion happening at the firm. They're slowly upgrading tools. A connected advisor is thinking about fixed pricing or value-based pricing. There's online e-sign. They're using state-of-the-art portals that feed that information directly into their tax programs. They have live chatbots or chat humans available to chat with their clients. There's more real-time sync happening. The bookkeeping's happening during the year, not just after year end. And they're utilizing integrated cloud apps. So where are you on this journey? Let's click into this polling question. Are you a traditional firm, a planning firm, a connected advisor, or are you none of these? And if you're none of these, would you mind putting in the Q&A what you think you are? I'll give you guys about a minute to do this one. All right, let's wrap up those answers on the poll. And as we're wrapping that up, I'm going to read some of the comments we got. You guys, there's a school for tax and accounting firms, which is fantastic. Another firm just does QuickBooks help. Some people are kind of a hybrid. They're in between planning and connected advisor. And some people are just billing hourly, not really doing tax at all, which, all good. Thank you guys for answering that question. When we look at the results from that polling question, we have about 32% sitting in traditional firm, 26 in planning firm, 34 in connected advisor, and 7 in none of these. I will say, as we go through this, while we're thinking about it, we'll give you a plan to think about getting to the next stage of your firm. So let's dive into platform and process. And again, please put anything in Q&A as it comes up. It makes it more fun if it's interactive, especially for me. So when you're becoming a connected advisor, the first thing is a shift in mentality. You have to think about it from the perspective of, why am I doing this? And question every task you're doing and question each process to make sure it's efficient and optimized from a technology perspective. The platform you use is just the platform behind that. So what technology are you thinking about? How do we create a platform? We're leveraging as much tech as we can. So let's think about your firm. Maybe you have a target market focus. I can say at High Rock, we have a few. We started focusing on tech companies. So our first industry group was technology, SaaS, software as a service. We did a bunch of biotech companies. And we focused pretty heavily on the forefront of tech development. And our client base was that. And so to service that client base, we were forced to use as many cloud-based integrated apps as possible, because if we didn't know that, our clients didn't believe that we were capable of advising them as tech companies. I still have clients to this day that'll send me new apps and I'm going, whoa, this is crazy, because I spend so much time in the fintech and accounting technology space that it's really interesting when there's new things that aren't on my radar. But I have to say that happens probably once a quarter at this point. The other times they send me apps and say, hey, have you heard of XYZ? I'm like, oh yeah, I actually met their CEO or their founder, or, I know their investment group, or I'm working with the VC firm that backs that, right? And that's amazing for me to be able to do that with our tech companies. But focusing in on a target market means that you understand what type of applications they'll be interested in their business. From an operational perspective, what matters? And this is when we dig deep on the vertical side. So we get really deep on the verticals that we service, and that's a vertical tech stack. The other side is understanding who's on your team. How do we get them to think about the next stage? Are they ready for this technology? Can they be trained into using this technology on behalf of your clients? And are they excited about it? And who are your clients? Are they ready for that as well? In my example of tech companies, they were more than ready for that. They were frustrated by the paper-based nature of the industry when they came to us. And still some are. I still get clients to this day saying, hey, I left my tax firm because they sent me an organizer on paper and asked me to provide all of my documents in an envelope, and I don't know how to live in that world. They, a lot of them don't even have real mailboxes. Everything goes to a virtual PO box and it's scanned. So they have PDFs of their business information and nothing else. And they don't know how to operate when paper is requested. So thinking holistically about who you're targeting, who your team members are, and who your clients are, and how you can work with each of those different groups to build a platform that works best for them is very important. It's also important to think about, what tools are your clients already using? Where are they, right? We use Xero predominantly for our general ledger system when we're working with small businesses. And Xero is great for handling all of the basic GL work that you need. They do amazingly on tech companies, and they do amazingly on service-based businesses. We even have a team that focuses on cannabis that works with them as well. And then from there, we build out our tech stack. So I mentioned both horizontal and vertical tech stack. So when we're thinking about horizontal tech stack, we're thinking about what technology can you use across your team. So I say, okay, so Xero is my core general ledger program. Now, what integrates with Xero that does payroll? Everybody has payroll. Gusto is really the one we love from that perspective. So we integrate Gusto, and that's a horizontal tech stack. On top of that, we might say, okay, so now we need something that's going to handle payment processing. Well, Stripe integrates beautifully with Xero. So we add that to our horizontal tech stack, and we say that can service any industry that we work in. So we might say those are our three core systems. And then we get to the point where we're dealing with a lot of bill pay. We're saying, okay, so now we need a bill pay system. Let's add on bill.com. And that's our horizontal tech stack as well, because that can go across any industry. And we start digging deeper and thinking about our e-commerce clients. We have a whole team that focuses on e-com. And they say, well, we're using a lot of Shopify. And we say, okay, so that's a vertical app because that only applies in the e-commerce space. So we put that into our vertical tech stack. And we do that process over and over and continue as we build this out and iterating and making sure we're focusing on the best integrated apps that really work for our clients, our team. And we keep it as simple as possible. We have one horizontal tech stack, one vertical tech stack. We might have a few exceptions here and there. If there's a specific client that it doesn't meet all of their needs, then we'll go through that. So I did get a few questions I want to answer. We have an anonymous person posting, we're a firm that currently focuses on tax resolution clients, which means we not only need as much automation around finding leads and warming them as we do keeping them happy through sometimes super long case resolution processes. Do you have a suggestion for best in class tech stack for a business that does this? And of course, also has tax and some bookkeeping. So I think we're going to talk a bit about the sales process in a little bit, which might help answer this question specifically. But it's also difficult when you're dealing with tax resolution and it's more of the practice management software you have to look at and making sure they're getting information back. So they have that feedback loop regularly and they understand, what's going on, where you are in the process, what you've done, and maybe that practice management system also includes, a listing of every time you've called or every letter you've written, so they can see that activity is happening, even if you're not actually getting to resolution yet, because we all know the IRS takes forever. We also got a question from Wendy asking which one works for cannabis industry, and Xero does support the cannabis industry as a general ledger. So when you're thinking about an ecosystem and building from that, also we have a polling question coming up, guys. Here's your helpful hint to come back and pay attention. So when you're collaborating on an ecosystem, you think about how do you build best-in-class integrated apps. The place I start is I always go to Xero's marketplace, or whatever general ledger system I'm working with has a marketplace. And that marketplace will include all of the integrated apps. And they'll tell you, and most of the time they include ratings where other accountants or users, business users have gone in and rated the integration and said, this app really integrates very strongly. This is, the pros and cons that I've seen. And it's very helpful to start there. The next thing I do is I always talk to the salespeople and get an understanding of, what their app does. Does it meet all my needs? I build out a list of, here's the things I need, the requirements I have, here's the tools I see, do they meet these requirements? And then what's the price across the bottom? And then I narrow it down to 3 for vetting with the sales team, because those sales demos can take a very long time. We all know sometimes salespeople can be pesky on the emails. But first, you need to build your process for evaluating those apps. I recommend thinking about it holistically from the perspective of your clients, from the perspective of your team, and from the perspective of your user requirements, and how few apps can you get to meet as many needs as possible. That's always the goal here. And then as you go, is there room for improvement? Can you make this better? How do we iterate it? All right, let's jump into the next polling question number 2. When building a client ecosystem, what is the central software to which all apps connect? Give you guys about a minute to do this one. All right, guys, let's get our answers in here. All right, so looking at the results, the majority of you, 83% said general ledger and 16% dashboarding. And I will caveat that there is a reason that you would want dashboarding to be your ultimate goal. If the majority of the work that you do is all CFO work, I can understand where you come to that as your answer, as it's more important to get to the useful information at the end than what the core is. But generally, when you're thinking about an app ecosystem, the core of what we do as accountants is held in that general ledger. All right. The other thing is when you're thinking about internal versus external apps, there's a difference, right? So we talked about horizontal versus vertical on the client side. So that is all external, right? We're talking about apps that are going to our clients. We're using on our client accounts. We're using for our clients. When we're thinking about small businesses, we're thinking about what can we do to give them more valuable data, which is why a lot of you answered dashboarding as the core piece of information here. But to get that data, we also need to run a firm, right? And when we're running a firm, we have to build our internal processes, right? And so we have different pieces of this. We have intake, right? When a client comes to you or a potential client comes to you, whether through a referral or through a cold call or whatever it is, they come in, you have to have a sales process. You have to go through that, close the deal, move them on to actually, onboarding them with your firm. Then you have to do the work. Then you have to bill the work in some way, maybe at the beginning, maybe at the end, maybe during the middle, depending on how you're doing that. And then, at the very end, hopefully they're a recurring client and you just kind of continue going through this process, but miss the sales process and miss the offboarding process until, they decide to move on to a new firm. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we do this here at High Rock. So before a job, we have a really automated sales process. We have forms that we've built out where our prospects fill out a bunch of proactive information. So we ask everything around, how big of a company are you? What type of company are you? How long have you been in business? How many bank accounts do you have? What services are you looking for? What's important to you? Where are your bottlenecks? And we go through a list of very specific questions about their business and why they're coming to us. The secondary piece of that questionnaire is, will you work well with us? So we ask questions like, if you send an email at 11 p.m. on a Saturday, do you expect a response immediately within an hour, the next day, or within an hour of the next business day? And if they answer anything, or, I think we have one more answer, which is, within 2 days of sending an email. If they answer anything outside of normal business hours, we give them a result that says, hey, you're probably not going to enjoy working with our firm the way we work with our clients. We try to set those boundaries early and often. We ask other questions, specifically if they have requirements on their teams that, we may or may not be able to meet, and how they want to interact and what their expectations are for communication. Do they expect to be able to call somebody's cell phone at any time? Or do they expect to be, respectful of working hours and what we do? And unfortunately, with the speed of communication, we know that some clients push those boundaries very early, and generally they're pretty self-aware that they're those people. And so asking those questions for us eliminates bringing in a client that's not going to be a good fit, that we're going to have to go through a whole lot of process and expense to work with and then end up offboarding anyways. So you have those two filters at the very front. Those forms feed directly into our CRM. We use Microsoft Dynamics, but there are tons of CRMs that you can use. We, before that, used a much cheaper one that was absolutely great called Active Campaign. There's HubSpot, which is awesome. There are just a bunch of CRMs you can use to automate this process. And then there's also some practice management tools like Canopy that include some of those CRM things inside of them. So our forms filter into there, it fills out a client profile, it assigns it to someone on our team who's capable of taking sales calls. During that assignment, the client or prospect in this case gets an email. That email says, hey, schedule a call. They schedule a call through a Calendly link, and then we show up to the call with all of their information. We've already reviewed it. We've already looked at what services they're looking for. We've gotten a general idea of how big their company is. Frequently, we've already asked for access to their Xero file, and we've already reviewed that and gotten a quote from our team in India that does some of the back office processing for us if they're looking for that type of work. And it makes the sales process very quick, very smooth, and also a good client experience for before the job. And then we move into service delivery. And when we move into service delivery, we have to think about technology and process as well. And so one of the things that we hear frequently from clients is either, they've had a poor onboarding experience, they've had a poor sales process, or, there's a really big disconnect between the sales process and the service delivery team, right? So maybe in the sales process, someone said, oh yeah, we'll be able to get your books closed by the 5th of the month, no problem. We'll be able to get your tax return out by February 15th, no problem. And then when it comes to service delivery, they look at it and you're thinking, oh, well, actually, this client doesn't proactively provide us any receipts. There's no way we can close the books by the 5th of the month because we don't have half the information we need to do that. But we didn't filter that out in the sales process. And so these processes and the way you define the process has a lasting impact on the way you can service that client and the experience that the client has at the end of the day. And what of those processes that you do that ensure that your service delivery and your sales process match, what of that can you automate? That's where we said, oh, we can automate a big chunk of that sales process, the data collection. We don't need to be live on a call or in person to ask those questions and type it in and then maybe misinterpret what we heard. We can ask it directly of them proactively. So all of that information is there and documented and clear to us before we even embark on that sales question or that sales meeting. Not every process can be automated with technology. We still believe that an in-person or a Zoom meeting is important to close those sales deals. We think it's very important to have that sense of who you're working with because we are still a trust industry. There are processes that you can completely eliminate with technology. One of the things we used to do was have, 2 meetings up front. The first one was a filter meeting. It was a 15-minute, hey, nice to meet you. Like, tell me about your business. Tell me what you're looking for. All of that has been eliminated because we put it in those forms. And clients actually like it. If you do it well, you do it right, you save their time, you make it more efficient, you make it easier for them and accessible. When you're eliminating a process that's face-to-face or something that includes, direct contact with a client, you have to make sure that the elimination gives them as much, if not more value. And I can tell you, I deal with disparate industries on our teams, and I hear different things in different places. So for example, our tech clients want every process eliminated as much as possible or replaced with technology. They love it. They want to be able to log into a portal, pull down their information. It's very efficient for them. They're working at 2 a.m. They're working on the other side of the world. They don't really care to talk to you or wait for human intervention to get the information that they're looking for. On the flip side, our cannabis clients don't want anything online. They would rather you print out a report, go sit down with them and go through it in person. They want to meet you and shake your hand before they work with you. We've flown all over the country to close deals with cannabis clients because they need to feel safe and they need to feel heard and they need to know that you understand their industry, and they don't get that sense via forms or via, a quick check-in on a Zoom meeting. They get that sense when they see you interacting with their teams and asking the questions when they give you a tour of their operation. And so understanding the industries and the type of clients that you're serving, even if you're in a highly automated, highly technology integrated team and firm, understanding that is very important. So we had a couple of questions come through. What company do you use to outsource some of your accounting work? We use a team called Analytics, and I'm going to type that in here as well, because it's spelled a little bit differently. You'll see my email at the end. If you need a referral to them, feel free to email me. And then we just had somebody talking about a different question. All right, moving on. So we also believe that a pricing model is very important to match the way you work. So think about this, right? For years, our industry did hourly billing, right? We did hourly billing. We would code all of our time, and quite frankly, we still code our time so that we can run metrics off of it, but we don't use that for billing. When you do that, you are presenting a picture to your client that you are worth the time that you spend on that client. Not necessarily that you are worth the thought you've put into it or the automation you've put behind it. So if you come in and you automate half the work, you put in new tools, you put in a better technology, you integrate it, you work with it very well, and you streamline it, you make it as efficient as possible for their work. What is the incentive to you? There is none. You will then bill less and you will get paid less, and you will still have to maintain the relationship, which is a lot of mental burden. So what's the incentive there? It's difficult as you start iterating with technology to maintain an hourly billing scheme. And I say that in a way of the world is innovating and pushing forward, and we need to have the right incentives and the right alignment with our clients to do this in the best way. Now, if you start value-based billing, you say, okay, so I'm going to provide this service, this product, whatever you want to call it, back to your client. I will give you tax return. I will give you monthly financial statements. I will give you quarterly planning, all of that. What is the value that the client perceives of that? Now, that historical value was absolutely based on the number of hours that a CPA could do it at some other firm. And there's probably a price that they've pegged in their head because that's what they've been paying for years, and it's likely wrong. So you're likely going to have to talk to them about inflation and about what's happened in salaries in our industry in the last 5 years. And also, when you get to the point where you know what that value is and you can provide it back, then you come in on your firm side and you automate, you make it as efficient as possible and as scalable as possible so that you have the highest profit margin on that value bill. And at the same time, the client feels that they're getting all of the value that they're paying you for. Now, fixed fees are very similar in that you have one price per month, per week, however you decide to fix it, but there's more of a service menu of options. So instead of looking at each client individually, you might say, okay, payroll for up to 50 employees is going to cost them $250 every single payroll cycle. And of course, that's low. And also, you put together your fixed fees. So you decide what that looks like for each service you provide. You caveat how many employees or how many transactions or how many bank accounts or, how many schedules on a tax return, whatever it is, you fix that fee, you have a menu, you go through it, you price it out. It's the same across the board. Fixed fees work incredibly well for firms that are consistently delivering the same productized service. And when I say productized service, I mean specifically you're providing tax returns very, very specifically, or you're providing bookkeeping reports. Value-based billing works very well for advisory firms that are providing more knowledge-based value. And I say that because if you do a fixed fee for knowledge-based value, then you have to limit the number of hours you meet with the client or the type of meetings you have or the types of conversations you have, and it gets way more complicated to maintain. So when we're thinking about a very simple sales process, I talked about a very complex sales process first. So a simple sales process, you identify the lead, you interview them, you build that relationship, or you set up a relationship, then you build it, then you add some value, and then you close it. There are tools that do all of that. So for example, Practice Ignition or Ignition now is a fantastic tool that helps you do all of the proposal delivery. So At Hyrock, we actually use PandaDoc integrated into our Microsoft Dynamics implementation. And also we've used Ignition in the past, and it's great for tracking what proposals are outstanding, what payments have been received, where you're at in that process, how you're growing. There's a ton of KPIs that they track for you to measure conversion metrics, to measure other metrics that you find important on your revenue and on your sales process. Now, it's really different for each type of firm. I've talked to firms that do predominantly referral-based sales, and I can say, conversion metrics or close percentages have been upwards of 85%. I can tell you my personal close percentage right now is like 87%. And also the majority of the prospects I engage with are direct referrals to me from generally other accountants, to be honest. And I'm going to take those personally because I value those relationships with the referral sources very much. And because there's such close relationships, I have a higher close percentage than most. I can tell you, other people on my team have 67 to 70% close percentage. Some of those are coming straight from the website with no information other than what we put out there into the universe. Some of them come from Twitter. We get very varied different people coming in. We do very minimal paid advertising. The majority of the advertising we do is actually content. And that content leads to more relationships, that leads to more referrals, that leads to higher conversion metrics. So if you're getting the majority of your business from Google AdWords, your close percentage is probably going to be closer to 25%. If you're getting the majority of your business from your best friend who's a lawyer that works in the office next door, you're probably going to be closer to 100%. And so you just need to think about this and measure it over time and compare yourself to yourself or firms that are getting leads from the types of places that you are as well. Another way to measure success is surveys. One of the things we do is send out NPS surveys to our clients every quarter. And we ask them, how are we doing? And we ask it by saying, would you recommend a friend? And this is a tried and true way to ask anybody if they're satisfied with the service that they're getting. This slide right here shows you, industry standard. If it's less than a 6.5, they're probably not saying great things about you in the background. If it's somewhere between 6.5 and 8.5, they're a passive supporter. They're fine. You might want to work on giving them a few extra value adds. And if they're above an 8.5, then they're a promoter of your brand. They're excited. They're referring business. They might be the one sending an email saying, hey, I work with, Jim on this every week, and he's amazing. Please use him for your business that's very similar to mine, right? And that'll drive up your close percentage. As accountants, we always care about measuring ROI. Here's my warning, guys. The next slide is the polling question number 3. It's a very important one, so come pay attention. So we measure ROI focusing on, the cost of customer acquisition. So this is called CAC, right? How much does it cost you to acquire these clients? If you're using Google AdWords, you're going to add in what you spend on those. You're going to add in your time. You're going to add in any type of review you do before you even get to those meetings. So that's mostly time, or it could be a paid review, or it could be a technology you use. There's other tech, like Verify IQ is a great one to just kind of run books through and get a report of how are they doing? Are they healthy? What does it look like? What does their close look like? Is it done? And then you can look at those reports and tell the prospect, hey, there's a lot of work to do here. So we're going to include a cleanup package as well as ongoing services. But all of those tools, all of your time, all of your team's time, the admin time, and anything else you spend to acquire that lead would go into that cost of customer acquisition. You have to think about the ROI. So when will that get paid back? So, maybe you spend an hour, maybe you have a tool involved, maybe you add some AdWords. So maybe your CAC is somewhere around $500 per client. So if you're pricing a tax return at $250 and you're spending $500 to acquire that client, it's going to take 2 years before you get that back. So you need to think about that in your pricing as well. And then think about the value of the customer. So how long are they going to stay with you? What's your average lifetime, length of clients staying with you? I can tell you ours is about 4.5 years. Now we've been around about 8.5, 9 years at this point. So that's not bad. It's not great. We're trying to increase that on a regular basis, but we did have a ton of turnover right in 2020 at that beginning of that pandemic. And then last year when all the tech companies, all the VCs pulled out, we had a ton of turnover on our client base because they couldn't afford us anymore. And that's okay. Sometimes it's okay when there's client attrition. And also, generally keeping your clients longer means that each of those wins is a higher value. And then you need to think about the acquisition versus the retention to measure ROI truly. So let's move into polling question number 3. Give you guys about a minute to answer this one as well. All right, let's close out that poll. When measuring success, which of the following includes the cost of acquisition and retention of clients, return on investment? We just talked about that. So before you jump into this, you really need to think about what you're trying to accomplish. So we started we went pretty broad, right? We started talking about technology and how technology is important. Then we talked about sales process. Then we talked about different applications in the Xero ecosystem. When you're thinking about this, what are you trying to accomplish? And take baby steps, right? So what are we doing? For our firm, I can tell you we're working on automating as much bookkeeping right now as we can. So our goal is to have our team US-based advisors. We're hiring people with MBA degrees. We're hiring people that have been controllers previously. We're hiring people that have been fractional CFOs in the past to come in and advise our clients. And what we want is we want them to have a full bookkeeping package done. So when we're thinking about our next measure of success, our next measure of success is at least 70% automation on the bookkeeping work. When we're thinking about how we currently measure success, we're not measuring that. I don't even know how to measure that at this moment, but I have to figure that out because that's the next step. We're moving into the next level of how we're utilizing technology. But first, you have to identify where can you even improve? Where do you have a lot of manual processes that you can come in and implement some technology? What are your clients telling you? When you send out that NPS score, sometimes you can put in a comment and have them say, where do you think we should focus our technology innovation at? And they might say, your client portal sucks. And you might say, I love it, but let me look and see what else is out there and what has improved since we implemented this 5-10 years ago. And think about each of those things as you go and as you continue. And then set up your own metrics, right? So you say, okay, now I know what I'm trying to improve. I know that I'm going to do some vetting of these different applications. I want it to integrate with XYZ. These are the things in my core, internal or external tech stack that will never change. How do I build around that? How do I measure that? What does success look like? And where are we going to focus our next steps? So I will challenge you guys to create a process, start identifying some pain points, identify where you have manual processes going on, where you feel like your team is ripe for innovation. Have a pilot a new technology, identify that, go through the process, and then reevaluate, because this process never ends. It doesn't matter how long you've been using cloud-based tech, how long you've integrated it. Every day you can find a new thing to innovate and a new thing to make better. And I can tell you, we've been doing that now the entire time that Hierarch's been around. And there's so many opportunities and so many pieces that we have to prioritize them. And we are constantly prioritizing what is next on the list to focus on, what is next on the list to focus on. Take it in bite-sized chunks and make sure that you're continuing the process and doing it over and over again. And thank you guys for your time. If you have any final questions, I'll be here. answering those questions.
Super. Thanks, Liz. Let me see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a couple of questions that I have around implementation and kind of creating that process. All right. So, a firm owner and stakeholders, they know the pain points, but how do you go about deciding which ones to address first? How do you prioritize? What would your recommendation be there?
So I would prioritize based on what's going to have the biggest impact. So if we think about that previous slide, how do you measure success, right? So if we're thinking about it overall, generally accountants are very interested in time, right? Because that's what we have our time. So what I think about is, okay, so if I'm going to fix this issue, which is a big issue, how much time is it going to take me to fix it? How much time is it going to save me and my team? And what is the client experience going to be during that and after that? And if all three of those things are maximum, that's going to be priority number one. Sometimes there's some intangibles in there, right? So you might say, I want to fix this issue, but it requires me to convert all of my clients' general ledger system, and that's going to be very painful, right? And the client experience is going to be horrible. And also, I have this other piece of it I want to do that I know is going to make a really great client experience. Well, maybe you want to do that one first. Then you get your clients all happy. They're going to feel great. They're going to have a lot of good feelings towards you. And then you wham them with the, hey, now it's going to suck for a minute. And then you come back with a third one and kind of sandwich that with two excellent client experiences with one that's kind of mediocre, but you make sure to over communicate and get them through the process.
Super. All right. And oh gosh, I had another one. And that was, what is something that you have done in your practice that there's no way you could ever go back?
So we use a tool called Scribe for our processes and SOPs. And what it does is when you're doing a process, so you're clicking through an app, you're typing something in, it takes screenshots of what you're doing and where you're clicking, and it creates a process manual for you automatically. And it's amazing. And I couldn't go back to not using it because it's how I explain to clients how to, give me access to things, or it's how I explain to our team members, like, hey, you need to click on this piece of Chase to get through to this thing to send an ACH, right? And it's how we document all of our client processes as well. But without it, I would be lost in trying to explain how to do things because it gives you both visual and textual context on it. And it's amazing.
Scribe, just SCRIBE, right?
Yep. Scribe now.
Awesome. Well, super. All right. Well, I think our Q&A is empty and our time has run short. So that's perfect timing. Liz, thank you so much. Always.
Thank you.
Just a tremendous amount of information that you share. Your contact information is there in front of people or there on the slide. So reach out to Liz if you have questions. She's always been super open and willing to share what she knows. So again, it's good seeing you again. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Thanks,
everyone, for attending.
Bye-bye.